Step 7. Next thing I want to look at is the project summary task. When I look at this project, I can't tell at a glance what the duration is for the entire project and the start and the finish for the entire project. Now, what some people do is they'll insert a task and they'll indent everything underneath it to achieve those results. But Project actually provides you with something that does that. And if you go to Gantt chart format, it's in the same position as outline numbering, which we looked at earlier. I want to turn on the project summary task, and what will happen is you'll acquire a row 0 above row 1. So I tick this option and there's my row 0. What it does is it pulls through a summary task bar onto the Gantt, but it's a grey colour, so it differs from the other summary tasks. It gives me the duration of the entire project, 24 days, and the start and the finish of the entire project. It now becomes sort of like my level 1 and everything else is indented under it. And it pulls through this title from the properties that we set up way back sort of in step 2. When we went to File and we went to Info and we went to Project Information and Advanced Properties, we put a title in here, and this is where it's grabbing it from. I cancel out of there. I can just edit this and just say, look, this is a 12-hour residential construction template. That's fine actually, but I could edit it if I wanted to, and that would update it in here and it would update it in the title. But turn on your project summary task because it's very, very helpful. It tells us exactly the start finish of the project. Now, the other thing I want to do is look at the fact that project by default will round your bars on your Gantt chart to whole days. And for some projects, this is not desirable. So you need to decide if this is part of your template or not. If I go to Gantt chart format and I go to layout, there's this option here, round bars to whole day. So if you have a task that's taking 2 hours and a task that's taking 3 hours, those bars round to whole days, and it can be misleading. These bars are actually starting at midnight and ending at midnight, even though they're 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. If I untick this option and go OK, you'll see they shrink a little bit, and now they're more reflective of their duration. So that's just something to consider. I'm actually going to go back to layout and I'm going to turn it back on and I'm going to go OK because that's actually how I prefer it. You can also control the look of lines when we get to that as well, but I'm going to go OK with that. Round bars to whole days. Now the other thing is the position of these vertical grey non-working bars. They are currently behind the tasks, and if you double click them you can say no, I want them in front of the tasks, and if I go OK you'll see that they come in front of the task and they show that you don't work weekends, and they show that it's not a big block of time, it's broken time. So you can double click and you can say go behind or in front or do not draw at all. If I do not draw them, they disappear, and I can't double click them now. So now I double click the time scale, much like we did earlier. And if I go to the double click the time scale, there's a non-working time here. So decide in your template whether you want your vertical non-working days behind or in front of the bars. I'm going to go in front and OK, because I want to show that we don't work weekends. So another consideration for your template. Now the other consideration is, do you need to show the time in your template, or do you just need to see dates? At any point in time you can go to File, you can go to Options, and you can change your date format. We changed the date format in the very first sort of step so that we could say that we wanted to start this project at 6 a.m. in the morning in the next coming Monday. But now that I've achieved that, I could cut the time and date back to just a date. And if I go OK, I can now double click and bring my column widths in, and things are less cluttered. So decide in your template, is it necessary for them to see the time or not? Now the other thing that I think you need to consider with your template is notes. I'm a big notes taker, and so I've actually created a column here called notes. Let me just right click and hide that column and show you how I did that. When you want to insert a column, you can right click literally any column and you can insert a column. For notes, I think they're best at the end here. So I'm going to click here where it says add a new column. Now there are a lot of columns in here to choose from, so I'm going to hit N to jump down to notes. And there's my notes column now. And I can hide it like I did earlier, or I can show it. I like to keep lots of notes about discussions I had with people, what we decided, what was the deposit, what was the phone number, who did I speak to, things like that. And I don't want to clutter my task name column up with that sort of amount of detail, and I don't want to keep other files. So I just keep them in my notes. So for example, if I'm about to do, what do we got here? So if I'm about to do an excavation, I may want to keep a note of what the phone number is, B4U dig, is 0800 123 456. So I can keep a note about that, and I can just keep that tucked away. Nobody sees it except me, but I could also print that if I wanted to print it. So typing a little note in that column is nice and handy if you make that available in your template. This little indicator column, that's the name of this column here, shows a little yellow post-it note, and if I rest on it, it actually shows me the note. So if that is tucked away, I can still see that that task has a note, and I can rest on it to read it. Or what some people will do is double click a task and they'll go to notes and they'll type a note in here. And you can type a lot of text in here, including bullet points and formatting and even insert pictures and maps and stuff. So notes are a big thing. Or some people, if they've got a decent sized screen, will actually split their screen and have a portion of the bottom of their screen just showing notes. So if I was to do that, I'd go to View and I'd turn on Details. By ticking Details, this pane appears in the bottom, and I can just drag this down to dedicate how much space I want. And I'm seeing my notes here. So I can click on a task and see or edit or add notes. If you're not seeing notes, just right click here and say that you want to see notes as opposed to predecessors and successors. You can right click and control what you're seeing in the bottom half of your screen if you've got a decent sized screen. To get rid of this split, I'm just going to untick Details. So some of the things that you should consider in your project template. Step 8. If you are going to put tasks into your template and you are going to outline structure them as we have, you may consider actually linking them as well. For example, if I was to select these two tasks and I was to go to the task tab in the ribbon, there is this chain link button here, or Control F2 is the shortcut key. If I click it, then it immediately links these two tasks and it populates what we call the predecessor column. Row 3 is linked to row 2. Row 2 comes before, is the predecessor of row 3. So when row 2 finishes, row 3 starts. I could also link these two just by hitting the chain link again. And again, when row 12 finishes, row 13 starts. It's a finish-start relationship. In fact, if I double-click this little arrow between the two, it tells me this is a finished start between installed temporary power service and installed underground services. So there's a link between those. I could break that link just by hitting this button here. Control Shift F2 is the shortcut key. That breaks the link, that recreates the link. Or you could actually just go through typing. So this is linked to 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20 and 21. And I've immediately created links. Or select them all and break the link, or create the link. Really easy to create links. So I'm just going to link all the tasks under framing, link all the tasks underneath interior finishes, and link all the tasks under landscaping, and link all the tasks under final acceptance. So go through and link your tasks. I may also decide that I want to link all of these tasks to sign contract and notice to proceed. So this is going to be linked to row 3, and there it is there. This is also going to be linked to row 3. So is this, so is this, so is this, and so is this. So you can actually just type what you want them to link to. This is going to be linked to row 10, and so there you see it span out. And this is going to be linked to row 13. So I like to link this first task to the last task in the previous phase for critical path reasons. And this I'm going to link to 22. And this I'm going to link to 33. And this one I'll link to 35. This one I'll link to 37. And just go through putting in the numbers. Now this I'm actually going to link to site work. No, foundation. So I'm going to link this to 15. Because that's who I want it to link to. So we're going to do the foundation and we're going to do the landscaping. I'm going to link this to 46 and 51. So 46, 51, because I want to link it to both of those completing. When both of those have completed, then I want to seek final acceptance. It's dependent on more than one thing. Same here actually, where we've got back here, I was looking, perform foundation inspection. That is based on waterproof insulate basement walls, correct? But it's also based on the completion of excavation for foundations. So I'm going to link that not only to 20, but also to 15. And so if I click on that task, and this is a very handy button, scroll to task, Control-Shift F5, it brings the task into view. So this is now dependent on two things finishing. We have to excavate for the foundations, plus we have to waterproof and insulate the basement walls before we can perform our foundation inspection. So feel free to type in the predecessor column and feel free to link to more than one task to achieve what you want to achieve, because that will then determine the start of that particular task. So think about your linkages, and if you have got tasks in your template, link those tasks in a sensible way. You can also double click this timescale and bring the timescale, I think the minimum is 25 and OK. So that will let you see horizontally, let's just move this over as well, more on your screen. So I'm seeing more on the screen as I scroll up and scroll down, but I'm still not seeing everything on the screen. Sometimes it's just not possible. So if you're sitting on a task, let's go this way. If I'm sitting on a task like install first floor joists and I can't see the bar, that's where I mentioned this one, scroll to task. It brings the bar into view that belongs to the task. So I sit on this, install backyard fence, and I scroll to task if I want to see that. That's such a handy button. I would actually right click it and I would actually add it to my quick access toolbar. So it's sitting up the top here, and it means that I can literally sit on any particular task and just scroll to task to bring it into view. I'm also going to double click this and put this back to say 55% or 50%, and OK. So I can see as much as I can but still be able to read it on my Gantt chart. So those are our links or our relationships in our template. Step 9. We've created the links or the relationships between our tasks. Our project is, if I scroll to the very top and look at the project summary task, is 203 days, starting on the 22nd, finishing on the 8th of the 3rd next year. What you may then do in your template, if you have added tasks and you have related them, is you may think about the type of link that exists between two tasks. By default, when we created the links, they were finish start types of links. I'm just going to use maybe this as an example here, row 49. So to install the backyard fence, I need to pour the concrete driveway and sidewalks. Actually, I might just use these two here. The front yard and the backyard plantings. There may be no need for row 50 to finish before row 51 starts. They could possibly, because they are the front yard and the backyard, they could start at the same time. So I'm going to change this 50. You can click up here in your entry bar, or you can press the function key F2 and then press the right arrow to go to the end. But I want to tack an SS on the end. SS is a start. So those two tasks will now start at the same time, saving you time at the end of the day. Sometimes. You could, instead of them both starting at the same time, also decide that they both finish at the same time. So I'm going to press F2 and change the SS to an FF. And now they both finish at the same time for whatever reason makes sense to you. Or you could change it to a 50 SF, which means that the first task will start when the second task is finished. I think you've got them around the wrong way if that starts happening. Or I just change it back to an F. a 50, sorry. And a 50 just means a finished start. So think about the types of relationships. If I double click this arrow between them, you can have a finished start, FS, or just a pure number. You can have a start, a finish, or a start to finish. Finish start is the default. Start is very, very common because it saves time. And this one is very rare. And so think about the types of relationships you could have between your tasks. For example, I might actually start the landscaping and groundwork at the same time as I start doing the foundations for the actual house build. So here we have a mention of row 15, but it should be 15 SS, so they both start at the same time. And so I can see the foundations are going to go and happen at the same time as the landscaping and the groundwork. I'm also going to make these two happen at the same time, so 50 SS, so they both start at the same time. And that has had very minor impact on my project, but every little bit counts. Now practice what you've learnt, absorb what we've covered, and I'll see you in the next video.